Welcome to A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm your host, Eric P. Bishop. This is a place where interesting people come to talk about their creative outlets. As for myself, I'm an author, podcast host, travel enthusiast, and lover of the outdoors. If you'd like to learn more about my published works or adventures, go to my website, ericpbishop.com. I hope you enjoy the show, and please go out and support today's guest. Thanks, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. Today I am pleased to bring back, for the second time, Adam Hamdy.
Eric, it is lovely to be back here on your show.
So, Adam, if you do not recall, I will remind you, you were the first guest on the program. So I was actually thinking of bringing you back on for guest 50. I like numbers. I'm a number finance guy.
Okay.
Um, You're probably going to be a little less than that. I'm not sure where in the order things are just on. We're in the mid 40s right now, so probably won't get you on 50 because I want this to come out sooner. But yeah, you've got a new book out, which I definitely want to discuss. You've got other projects going on, which whatever you can discuss, I'd like to get into. And almost a year later after we talked, you're still living in a far, far off land. And we'll talk about like, hey, what's what have you learned? What have you grown to love? Is there anything that, do you miss merry old England where I just was, a couple months ago? But before we do all that, how's Adam Hamdy? How's life? What's going on with you?
Life's pretty good. I think 2024, like for a lot of people, was challenging in different ways.
Hmm.
We had a bereavement in the family, which is always tough.
Right. Right.
Um, and, career-wise, 2024 was quite good and
Hmm.
allowed me to build a platform for 25. So in that way, it was good. But I think it was just very demanding. It was very grueling, I think. And
Yeah.
everybody I speak to says 2024 was a tough year. It was
Yep.
tough for business, creatives. It's been a difficult year. And obviously, I've got a lot of friends who are based in California, and 2025 has started even worse for a lot of people. And my heart goes out to them.
Yeah.
It's terrible what's going on over there. But for us personally, we're quite fortunate. We're here in this on this tropical island, Mauritius,
Hmm.
which is off the east coast of Africa.
Hmm.
And yeah, life's good.
Yeah, we might talk about it more when we get closer, when we talk a little bit later about Deadbeat. But yeah, the fire, as we're recording this, LA's still on fire, parts of LA. Uh, I don't think we've talked offline about it, but have you spent time there over the years?
Oh, I mean, I lived there on and off.
Okay, you did.
Yeah, for some years, I spent a lot of time in
Okay.
LA, and actually in a lot of the places. So it's been um, it's been really difficult because I've got friends who've had to evacuate, people who've
Hmm.
lost their homes. A lot of the places that we used to hang out, we lived in Malibu, in Topanga rather, and we'd go down to Malibu a lot. And
Yep.
a lot of the places have just gone.
Yeah.
Got friends who live in Pacific Palisades, and obviously they've been terribly badly affected. And
Sure.
it's just it's really awful. It's one of those things that I think will take a lot of time to sink in, both
Hmm.
socially for people to realize the enormity of what's happened, but also personally for people to get over this and to rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
It's really terrible.
Yeah, I think before we got on this morning, I was checking the news and trying because I'm just same as you. Didn't live out there, but I've been with this company for actually 2 decades, which is kind of crazy. So one of my
Wow.
earlier jobs with the company that I had for a while involved a decent amount of travel, and I had offices. My region was the West Coast, so I was constantly, sometimes every couple months or multiple times a year, going to the West Coast. And LA was multiple times a year going to LA. So same as you, where I go down and have dinner in Malibu, and been through that whole area. Friends, coworkers still there that are we still have offices there. I don't know of any of them that have lost their houses yet, but I know they also had power. They had, at one point, a couple days ago, they had 3 million houses without power. Just so, and I think Pacific Light and Gas, or not Pacific, whatever, P&E, whatever it's called, they turned off big swaths of power just because they didn't want that to start additional fires with the winds and everything. So Yeah, my heart goes out to those people. And we obviously went through, I think you and I talked about it via online, um, pretty big disaster here in Western North Carolina with the
Mm,
hurricane. So, and that's
mm,
still, I mean, we've had some turned really cold this week. We actually had snow for the first time in 3 years, which is, look in my backyard now, it's almost pretty much gone, but it ended up not being as much as they said it was going to be. But we still have people up, an hour from me that are living in tents, that they don't even have FEMA houses or anything. And I mean, it's teens. When I go out in the mornings for a walk, it's bundle up. So yeah, it makes your heart hurt for these people, especially when you have personal connections with them. And then it almost, when you have a house, when you have lights, you have internet, you have everything, you almost have like a guilt of like, okay, why am I totally fine? And all these other people
mm,
I mean, people in LA are literally going through hell on earth right now. And not
yeah.
not just the celebrities. And that's something that you always got to keep in mind is, yes, it went through an area that, multi-million dollar homes, or that's probably the average one is multi, but tens of millions for some of these houses. But a lot of just regular, majority of them are just regular teachers and firemen and, accountants and different people that, how are they going to rebuild? Because also a thing, and you probably know a little bit about it too, is here, if a disaster happens, the permit process is pretty quick. You want to start building a new house, you don't go through a massive thing. Well, there, when you're on the coast, they have an old commission just for building permits. That's part of the commission for the coast. I've been reading stuff saying it could be a year before permits are even issued for many of these people. Plus, they obviously have to clean up the debris of, at right now, 5 to 10,000 dwellings. Who knows what it will end up being? And so you're talking 2, 3 years probably before you see new houses in these places, or dwellings. And it's just like you were saying, alter your life more than you can possibly imagine.
Mm. I also think, when we stayed in Topanga, everywhere you go in the state park, there's always notices about don't leave broken glass, be very careful about setting open fires, don't set
Right.
any naked flames, and all this sort of stuff. And so we were conscious, my wife and I were very conscious of the fact that it is a huge fire risk there. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to require a lot of change. People are
Yep.
going to have to change the way they construct things, the way they zone things. It's because you can never have this happen again. You can never, you can never allow this to take place again because then you're basically saying this is a hostile environment in
Right.
this corner of the world, which I think for Los Angeles and for such a thriving city would be disastrous. So people are going to have to learn lessons from this, and I just hope that the people in charge are paying attention and are mindful of that because it's historically it's something that we're not very good at in the UK. It's still getting houses built on floodplains, and then they wonder why they're getting flooded.
Yeah.
Um, we yeah we as a species we can find it quite tough to learn lessons. So
Yeah.
I hope first of all people recover and get their lives back on track. But I also hope that we learn lessons from this and change the way that we do things to avoid this sort of thing happening again.
Right. Yeah, and it's one of those things, hindsight's always 2020, and especially right now, it's still going on, but the finger pointing is already happening. Hey,
Mm, yeah,
why was the reservoir bone dry for maintenance?
yeah,
And why are fire
yeah,
hydrants not getting water? Well, there's no water in the in the reserves. You're not,
yeah.
you are going to run out. And so there's so much of that going on, which will, and if I lived there and if I was involved in it, I'm sure I'd be one of those ones on a bullhorn screaming. But I think you're right. I think at some point, as they hopefully, quickly get it under control in the next few days, which they're saying the winds are kind of staying for a period of time. And so
Mm,
it could be something. I think a new one sprouted, or I think Brentwood's under threat and burning houses in Brentwood this morning. So the fire kind of
mm,
leaped over the mountain there and is in Brentwood. So another area that I've spent some time in so over the years. And yeah, no, I agree with you. It's it's difficult because you go and not mitigating what's happening over there at all. But wherever you might decide to live, you think, oh, there's got to be a perfect place that has nothing. There's got to be somewhere that's, quote unquote paradise. And it's like, no, there's typhoons, there's earthquakes, there's hurricanes, there's blizzards, there's,
yeah.
you
I
gotta be
mean, here
careful.
we have cyclones here
Cyclones, yeah.
in Mauritius. So every year, last year, I think there were three, 2 years ago, four maybe.
Okay,
First year was the worst. There was a really big one that came really close to the island and
gotcha.
caused a lot of damage. And so a lot of yeah, cyclones is Mauritius's thing, but the cyclone season lasts probably about 2 months.
And
Um,
remind me, is cyclone similar to a hurricane? What we have on the East Coast?
yeah, I mean, so hurricane is what you call it in Europe and America. A
Okay,
cyclone is what you call it in Africa,
okay,
and a typhoon is what you call it in Asia. So it's just the same thing, but
yeah. Got to
different
mix up the
names
names a
depending
little
on where
bit.
you are in the in the world. I didn't know that until we moved here. So yeah, so the cyclones that we get here can be quite huge. You can have 1,000 mile weather system,
Yeah,
and this island is 50 miles top to bottom and 30 miles across. So
yeah.
when you see the map and the storms there, and you're like, "Where's the where's Mauritius?" It
Where are
is
we? Yeah,
yeah. So it does make you quite conscious of the forces of nature. But having said that, you might get 3 or 4 days of heavy rain, one really bad day of wind, and then another couple of days of heavy rain as it passes away. So it's not two months of solid bad weather. It's a week and then 2 weeks of good weather and then a week and then 2 weeks of good weather and
yeah.
then the season's over and you just kind of so I think this isn't a bad place to live at all. We get about 300 days of sunshine here a year.
Not too shabby.
Yeah.
Have you, I don't think I've asked you this offline or offline, but have you thought long term of staying, or would you go back to UK, or thought that far out, or none of my business?
Uh, we're sort of taking each year as it comes. I mean, I
Okay,
love it here, really do. I
you
think it's
do.
a great country. I think with some sort of tweaks to the social and economic fabric of the country, I think it could be one of the best countries in the world.
Okay, interesting.
Certainly from a natural perspective,
Right.
in terms of the resources they have, it's incredible. People are really lovely. Society's very safe.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the
Um,
crime and everything. Yeah, how that is, and I know it's everywhere in the world, but some areas obviously are more have.
yeah, so the murder rate is about the same as America,
Okay,
per capita,
per capita.
so
Okay,
per 100,000. But it's very concentrated in the criminal sort of community.
gotcha.
So random,
Where you go for book research every so often, huh?
yeah, yeah, random severe acts of violence are extremely rare,
Okay,
extremely rare, extremely rare. And in general, crime is pretty low to the extent that the police officers here, and there are a lot of police officers, the country believes in very visible policing.
Mhm.
But none of them carry truncheons. None of them carry, batons. None of them carry pepper spray. They don't carry guns. They don't carry anything. It's just their physical authority is enough to, obviously, if things turn rough, and
Right.
there has been unrest in different areas at various points while we've been here. They'll send in riot police, and they do have armed units and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But in general, for day to day, such a peaceful place, such a um, you know, calm, mellow place. You get a bit of tourist theft, pickpocketing, and that sort of thing in some areas, but in general, it's a lovely place.
Yeah. For some reason, when you said that, I was going to make a comment about how our officers are always armed, but for my brain just went to 1996. I took a school trip between my freshman sophomore year of college to Europe. And I've said it, I think, on other podcasts before, and greatest trip of my life. And that's not a negative. I've said that over the years sometimes, and people will be like, "You were 19. Why would you say that no trip is going to be that great?" And I said, "Well, because I was still at this formative years where I was, just starting college and stuff. And literally for 3 weeks, I got to move my way from Rome all the way to London. Got to see 7 countries. Got to see
Wow.
kind of the most precious artifacts that are in a lot of the museums, churches, just cultural experiences, plays. Um, but as we landed, I'd never been over, never left the country. We actually had a layover in Gatwick, I think first. I don't
Yeah.
think we went through Heathrow and then down to Rome. But we get off the plane in Rome, and the first thing I saw as I step off the plane is officers with fully automatic weapons. And it just, I hadn't, that wasn't something in 1996 you saw at the United States airports. Now, now there's either a dog or the guy's got two guns out just walking around, you know.
Yeah.
It's like a military state in some
Yeah.
areas. But it was one of those things where I was just kind of like, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Wow, what goes on here? And it we had a wonder. I loved Italy. I've been back multiple times. Wonderful trip, but it was kind of opens your eyes, and I think that's the beauty of what you've done in a way of moving the family to a different culture, see different societies, and especially with your kids their age, is seeing something that's outside of your little purview of life. You
Mhm.
learn stuff,
Yeah.
good and bad, but you learn something. And I think that's a precious thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just finished making a documentary here in Mauritius, actually, and
Hmm.
it's a documentary about the young people in Mauritius. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody on Friday who said Mauritius is a microcosm of the world.
Hmm.
And you see issues here that are very concentrated, but they're found everywhere in the
Found
world.
everywhere, yeah.
And they're concentrated because it's such a small place and you have so many different communities living here.
Right.
Um, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a while. And we made this documentary following six young people and looking at the opportunities and um, challenges that they face. And we got to interview lots of politicians, business
Hmm.
people, and it took me, much more into the society and into the country than I've been before. And it
Yeah.
was just fascinating to get to know the place in in a different way. And I
Right.
think that kind of that exposure, giving yourself, broadening your horizons, and also for our children, broadening their horizons, it's
Yeah.
incredibly valuable because
Yep.
you grow up thinking of this is the only way you can do things. This is the way that, I mean, to an American, the idea of your cops not being armed at all, not having anything, just
Right.
a plain blue, light blue, sky blue shirt and plain trousers.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. Very, very true. Well, and also we both come from countries, I think, our home countries where for better or worse, we kind of think the way we do it is the way other people should do it.
Yeah,
Our
yeah,
language, why we have a couple different similarities, you might be a blue
yeah,
or whatever. We have different terminology, but our language, the English language, is
yeah.
pretty much the universal language in the world. I know it's not spoken everywhere, but almost, even as a
Well,
second language for most countries.
Bizarrely, it is the official language of Mauritius. So it's the official legal and governmental language of Mauritius.
Right.
Um, but despite being French and Creole being the dominant practical day-to-day languages, English is the official language of Parliament and the official language of government and of law.
Yeah.
So it's you're right. Our language is very dominant around the
It
world,
is.
which has made it easy to settle in here.
So, quick 10-second story. So we had the hurricane and I lost my internet, which again, least of the concerns compared to what most people went through around here. Well, I work from home, you know that. So I had to have internet. So I ended up getting Starlink. So I got Starlink, which actually works. I was a doubter. No issues with Musk or whatever, or no qualms, but I was like, that can't work as good as they say. And it really does. Well, I'm also a procrastinator. I know people wouldn't think that because of all the way I'm working on books. Trust me, I'm a procrastinator. I'm horribly working on stuff at the last minute and pissed at myself for letting it get to the last minute. Well, I figured after months and months and months, I probably should cancel my cable service for internet came back on eventually. I never even turn it on. I look over at the router and go, "Oh, it's on." I just like whatever. I have Starlink now. My boss said keep it for a few months, make sure Starlink works good. So finally, I picked up the phone the other day and said, "Cancel the cable." It's like 130 US dollars a month for what? It's a backup? No. Get on the phone. Lady in Texas I spoke with at the cable company, super nice lady, and I mentioned my trip to the UK. We were talking about travel. She had just been out. We were talking about the wildfires and what was going on in California. And I said something come out the UK and how much I loved Edinburgh. And she's like, what language do they speak there? And I'm like, no, it's English. It's English. And she was like, oh, so I could go and I could, I was like, no, no, no. I said, and they have wonderful accents as well. So I said, I probably need to pursue a woman from the UK, at some point because she'd tell me what to do and I probably would do it just because of the accent. US women, I'd be like, I've been married before. Leave me alone. I don't want to, don't boss me. UK woman could probably boss me and get away with it because of the accent.
Uh,
So any
I
UK
love it.
women hit me up. So no, I'm kidding.
So, okay, this I tell you what, when we started, I thought, oh, this is starting to feel a bit like Joe Rogan. It's talking about current affairs and news and events, and now we're moving into a dating matchmaking service. So,
This
yeah,
this this could be Jerry Springer by the end. If your
there
shirt
we go.
goes
I
off,
hope not.
goodness knows.
I hope not.
As long as it's not Maury Povich and we don't come up with an envelope and say, Adam, it is your child.
Yeah, exactly. We did the paternity test.
We did the while you were sleeping, we took a sample, and guess what?
Yeah,
It is your
yeah,
child.
yeah. No. What are you working on anyway? How's your writing going?
Um, it's good. I'm always behind. We've talked a little bit offline in the last year, just messages and stuff. I think we've done a phone call here and there or a FaceTime message here and there. Um, I did discover this last year doing two books in a year, even though they weren't completely having to be written in a year's period, but trying to put two books out in a year. Um, was probably stupid. It was very taxing, especially being the publisher and the writer and of course I outsource editing and covers and marketing stuff as well. But trying to be the ringleader behind the scene and then also write. I went so many months without, not that I didn't write, but without writing anything of substance of like finishing books or writing lots of a future book. So I've kind of scaled back a little bit. 2025 was going to be the same thing, and I think at this point my goal is I don't want to I haven't picked the date yet, so that's why I can't release the date. But the next book will come out in the summer, and then the other one that was going to come out end of the year, I might be able to put it out by February. It's a book that I wrote years ago. It's probably something we talked offline about, a book that needs some work. It needs a redo, and I can do that in a few months, I think, of firm, every night working on it on the weekends when I don't have the kids. But so for summer 2025, I'm putting out Supreme Justice, which I believe is one we might have talked about a while back. Might have had a different title even at one point, which was my Merci de Ata, who is my female assassin from the Body Man.
Mm. Yeah.
But the big change I decided to do not very long ago was I kept pulling the body man into the narrative, and I realized as I was because I'm a pantser, so as I was kind of going through the flow of the story, and I'm like, instead of making this Mercy's own standalone, I think it'd be much wiser to just integrate this book into the series for the Body Man. So I pulled up even more. So the breach of trust ends, and I don't want to necessarily give it away, but it ends in a way that you're like, what's going on? And there's a list of names. And who are these names and what's going on? And the Body Man feels very vulnerable. So this book is going to kind of expand on that while also setting up what will end up being the fourth book in the series, which will come out summer of 2026. But at the same time, Merci has a very big there's a legal case going on, and she gets pulled into the fray to start killing people, and Supreme Court case, and you kind of figure out like, wow, this is getting complicated fast, and why is she being hired, and who's the bad guy, and yeah, it's fun. So I should be done in about 6 or 7 weeks. And then
Cool.
I'll flip it, start editing, and the goal is to get it by the editor I hire by April 1st, I think is my goal. And then hopefully it'll be out by, I'd say August is likely, end of July, August. I can flip them pretty quick because of me having the control of a lot of the aspects of it. But I want to get, like I normally do, I got a good group of beta readers and people that I trust their opinion that hit me hard. So I want to get it in their hands sooner rather than later to say, okay, do you see any big plot twists? Do you see, you know, I feel confident at this point of what I'm doing that I don't need a year to keep going over a manuscript and fixing it because while that will be book five, I already have three other books that have not been published as well. So really, I've written like eight books at this point. So I've got a flow now. And the other thing, and maybe you've noticed as well, is I can put a project aside for a while, pick it back up, and within hours, I'm back on it. I don't have to go reread the whole book. I can jump back to where I was and keep going with the flow. So yeah.
Cool. Sounds
Oh,
awesome.
so literally not much going on, Adam. Not,
No,
not much going
no.
on.
Well, I think it's amazing to do two books in a year and have a job and everything. Yeah, it's
Well,
amazing.
I think we've talked about this before offline. This is why I was put on planet Earth. you find what's your calling. The struggle I've had for years now is how do I make the thing I've been put on planet Earth be financially viable as a way to pay
Mm.
for my time on Earth? And I'm
Yeah.
getting there. I'm getting there. Even like the Body Man, I re-released the Body Man last year. I didn't sell as many copies as it sold with the publisher for 2 years, but ironically, I made more money on the Body Man than I did with 2 years in the publisher, with selling a lot less
Mm.
copies. Of course, I'm getting 100% of the proceeds instead of
Yeah.
small percentage. And
Yeah.
also I didn't have much expense in it. I didn't have a lot to pay back. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. It's at the end of the day, I love doing it. So even if it's a net zero or whatever, if you told me today, hey, I got a crystal ball over here in Mauritius, and I looked at the crystal ball, and Eric, you will never make this as a career. You'll never do this. So are you gonna quit? I'd be like, hell no. Hell no. I'm gonna keep writing, even if it's just to every now and then send you a story and say, hey, I know you're busy, but I'm more important than Patterson. Read this thing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it. That's what I always say to everyone. You cannot do this for money. You can't do it for reward. You can't do it. You can only write because you love writing.
Yeah.
That's the only reason
It's
to do it. Because otherwise, there are better ways to make money. There are less painful ways to go through life in terms of, constantly putting yourself out there for people to criticize and you get reviews that may not be positive. Art is a timely thing. So for example, Deadbeat is set in a lot of the places that are now gone.
mhm.
So my book that came out in December is already irrelevant because a lot of the bars he goes to, a lot of the restaurants he goes to, the houses he visits, they're all gone. Which is a terrible tragedy. And like
Right.
you said about the internet, it's a tiny, tiny thing, but it's a very stark example of the fact that um, there's so much to do with timing in art. And,
Hmm.
I always talk about F. Scott Fitzgerald, dying thinking that he wasn't particularly successful.
Right.
And it was only posthumously that he attained the success now and is regarded as one of the greats. And so there are a lot more rewarding ways to go through life. You have a corporate job, you get a performance review every year. Your boss says, "Yeah, you're doing really well. Here's a raise." You get promoted. Writing's not like that. Writing's a
Yeah.
roller coaster. It's and you're it's it th- there's no kind of there's no filter, and you stand or fall by your work. So I think my advice to everybody who says, "Oh, I'm thinking about being a writer," and I said, "Well, if you can do anything else, do that."
That's
You have
hilarious.
to love it. You
Yeah.
have to love it. You have
Right.
to do it because you love the process of writing.
You have to do it for like almost the innocence a child has of something that you want to go play, you want to do something because
Yeah,
it's in you,
exactly.
and you're not looking for external reinforcement
Yeah,
that you're doing the right thing.
yeah,
100%. Because if you're
yeah,
doing this because you want people to give you money, they want to tell you
yeah,
how good they are, they want to give you
yeah,
a Hollywood book movie contract and all that stuff. There's a big bridge in Northern California, jump off it. Now,
yeah.
there's nets there now, so you might not get your desired results. But yeah, you're going to be in a world of hurt if that's the reason you're getting into this business.
It's and I think also people, it's like anything, like acting, music, sports, anything like that. The odds are so stacked against you
Right.
succeeding that
Yeah.
success isn't the reason to do this. The process is the reason to do this. The
Right.
experience is the reason to do this.
Correct.
Chasing a check, chasing an award, chasing an outcome that you can more easily achieve
Hmm.
elsewhere. So if you want to make money, go into AI, go into crypto, go into programming, go into finance.
Right.
There's loads of better ways to make money. Don't be a writer.
No.
Um,
Well, we both have children that are in a current passion or have a passion right now in their life, and hopefully long term. Your son with soccer, my son with music. Again, like you said, to get to the place where that pays your bills is you are the 1% of the 1%. You are the top. You have to really, you have to, and not 1% for necessarily, but you're the exception to the rule.
I'd say it's even less than 1%. And actually,
Probably.
so 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 you can do the numbers with football, with soccer, what we call football in England.
Yeah.
You can do the numbers and look at the number of kids who play Saturday or Sunday league, then the
Right.
number who get selected into an academy, then the number who make it from an academy into a professional team. It's not even a fraction of a percent. It's
Right.
so tiny. And, my son is very gifted at football and is on the radar of a few professional clubs. And he plays for a Premier League academy here
Mm.
in Mauritius for a UK Premier, an English Premier League rather. Um, they have an operation here, and he plays for them. So he's getting noticed, and he's had lots of sort of scouts and people sort of paying attention to him.
Sure.
And they tell you stories that will make your hair curl, turn
Yeah.
white, um, of kids who were absolutely at the top
Hmm.
and were playing for their country, playing for a Premiership academy, and then they get dropped for nothing to do with the quality of their football, nothing to do with who they are as a player, but to do with a business reason or to do with a political dynamic that was going on in the club.
Hmm.
And the way that the system's set up, these kids accrue a cost to them from the age of 12
Sure.
onwards. And it
Right.
means that they have to be sold. So they can't just go on a free transfer to another club.
Right.
Um, and it actually makes it really difficult for them to continue playing football. And the attrition rate, the number of kids who at the age of 18 or 21 in England will stop playing football, will fall out of a club and not find another space, another home for them. It's absolutely it's more like 99% that's what happens.
Oh,
So
well, yeah.
it's not just about your talent and you're about the luck and everything. It's all also about business dynamics. And the same thing is true in writing, music,
Hmm.
film, less so in TV. TV, you can actually still have more of a career pathway.
Hmm.
But these other fields, there's so many factors working against you. You have to do it because you love it.
Yeah. Well, I was just say add to it as well, because I do know some people that have pursued professional sports and stuff, is your sports window is very small versus if you want to be a musician, like my son's very big into bluegrass right now, or if you want to be like us and be writers, you can, you could write books and sell 10 copies, and the next book sells 8 copies, and the next book sells 50 copies. Your 10th book, though, might catch fire and you sell 1 million copies. That is statistically impossible or very unlikely, but it's possible. We both know people that have gotten massive contracts and massive deals and made a lot of money doing this. Again, if that's your goal coming into it, though, probably set the wrong goals to do this. Do this because you love it. And if you want to be successful, know that this is something that your likelihood of being an overnight success is extremely unlikely. So do it because you love it, keep pushing. And that's what I tell people all the time. I don't really believe in luck. I don't believe that, well, that person got it and that person didn't get it. There's a factor there that you can't control 100%. But the one thing you can control, especially for what we do for writing, is keep writing books. Keep trying to get better, learn the craft, read the masters. What do they do different from you? And then be your own, be you, write in your own style. Don't just copy Tom Clancy or, James Patterson or, Charles Dickens or whoever, whatever your style is. But be yourself and be the best version of yourself. Don't be an asshole. Be nice to other authors. Help other people out. Do what's right, but keep pursuing it. And if you enjoy it and you never become successful, that's okay because what we were talking about before with with people losing everything in the forest fires and all that. And of course, this might be a bad example of the second because these could burn in a house fire, but when you're gone, people can have your books. Other people purchase your books or they buy the digital copies. Those are things that are going to live more than likely much longer than you. And so when it talks about kind of what you're doing in life or what your pursuit is, if it's money and this and that, the beauty of creating books is that something that your great grandchildren might be like, oh, great granddad, great grandpa Adam wrote books. He killed people in books, or he made this amazing book that, Deadbeat. Let me read it. And so they'll get, and I always tell people this, as an author, while what we write is mostly fiction, sometimes we put some fact in there, some real anecdotes that people don't understand, but there's a little piece of your soul in every book. There's a piece of you, and especially with what you've been writing the last couple of years, you've kind of been more delving into, you kind of moved from the thriller genre, for your last couple books into more of books that I think make you think. And I think that's maybe it's psychoanalyze you and say, maybe it's because of your stage in life and where you're at, you're thinking more about mortality and you're thinking more about, hey, what do I want out of this life? What is this life for? And I love that that gets put in the pages because then other people can read that and be like, yeah, what do I think about that? What do I, what's my purpose here? Or like in Deadbeat, if, with that plot, what if I was put in that situation? What would I do or not do for money or for love or for fame or for whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've thought about mortality for a long time. I mean, it's I did a second degree in philosophy, and one of my specialist subjects was philosophy of religion. So I
Okay.
studied a lot of the different faiths around the world, and
Yeah.
it's quite a common feature of Eastern faiths and philosophy to say consider death. Just
Mhm.
not in a morbid way,
Right.
but in a way that says this will all come to an end.
Right.
You can't take anything with you. We're not
Ex-
pharaohs. You can't take anything with you. Think about that. If it was tomorrow, what would you do differently today? If it was 10 years from now, what would you do differently today? If
Yep.
it's 20 years from now, what would you do differently today?
Hmm.
So it's that sort of idea of being conscious of the fact, because too often it's so easy to squander, because when we're in the moment now, you think, oh, this will go on forever. I'll always be like this and in this state of health and in this whatever financial situation you're in, whatever social situation, your
Hmm.
relationship, but things change.
Yep.
And this idea of contemplating the end of things helps you get out of the habit of being complacent and
Yep.
assuming everything's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And I think it's a useful thing to do as a writer as well, because we know people who they've written a successful series. They That's all they do. They keep writing that series,
Hmm.
and the money keeps flowing, and but that's all they ever do, and they don't ever really explore themselves or their writing in a
Hmm.
different way.
Right.
And it's dangerous, I think, to get complacent
Yeah.
as an artist and as a person. I'm always interested in exploring new things, trying to push myself in different ways. So from that perspective, it's contemplating mortality is something I've done. It's not a recent phase of life.
Yeah, no, I'm the same boat. Same. I know we've had discussions over the years about lots of different stuff, and I've just kind of definitely in the last 5 years with everything that happened and changes in my life that it's like, what do I want out of this life? And I just returned, like I mentioned before, back in end of November. We missed each other, I think, by a week, but took a trip back over to the UK, which was my second trip in 2 years, and part of that trip and why it occurred is after the divorce and working out custody and all that, every other year I don't have my kids for a full week for Thanksgiving. Yeah, could I go over and see them for a few minutes, or could I barter some time to have them for a few hours and give up some time? Sure. But generally speaking, I got a week, and especially if they went somewhere, which their family's all here, so they wouldn't. My family's nowhere near here. So I'm kind of, and it's not woe is me. This isn't a woe is me conversation, but I'm alone here. Yes, I have friends, and I have amazing friends. I'm very blessed with them. And they've always said, don't be alone for holidays. Come to our house. And I did that years ago for Christmas Eve, for one of the Thanksgivings. Well, several years ago, I said, okay, I don't have the kids for a week. I had the opportunity to open up to go over to the UK to go to Wales and see a band that I'm friends with, um, see some of their shows and hang out, have dinner and all that stuff. And I just at that point made a vow and said, okay, I've never been to Wales. I'll be in Wales on Thanksgiving Day. So every other Thanksgiving, when I don't have custody, I don't have my kids, every 2 years, I will leave the country. And my vow to myself was not only will you leave the country, you'll spend Thanksgiving Day in a country you've never been. So
Wow.
that way I'm not like sitting there somewhere on Thanksgiving and saying, I'll miss my kids anyways. I'm not some jerk that doesn't love his kids, but I don't want
Mm.
to be, somewhere where I'm really focused on, oh, it's thanks. So I go somewhere where they don't celebrate Thanksgiving. So, like I said, 2 years ago, I was in Cardiff, Wales at Giovanni's, an Italian restaurant, having dinner on Thanksgiving night, having pasta or whatever I ate, or chicken marsala. Yeah. So a month and a half ago, I was at St. James Gate learning how to pour a Guinness with my mom in Dublin on Thanksgiving Day. And even talking about, life and all that, taking her on that trip. She had never been overseas. And I reached out to her probably March of last year, almost a year ago, and said, "Hey, mom, I said the word Thanksgiving. I think she got excited and said, are you coming home? You don't have the kids. Are you going to come home?" And I'm like, "No, I don't come home for Thanksgiving every other year." I said, "I'm going to go to Ireland. You want to come to Ireland?" Because she's talking about going to Ireland for years. Yeah, yeah. So as I kind of worked out the trip over the course of the year, I was like, well, if we're going to be there, she's never seen London, and I've been multiple times, but I want to take her to see Buckingham Palace and Big Ben and Trafalgar Square and all that. So we worked in several days in London, and then I'm like, well, we're there. How easy is a train ride up to Edinburgh? Piece of cake out of King's Cross. Um,
Cross, yeah.
so got to see platform 9 3/4. Harry wasn't there for some reason at that time, and went up to and Edinburgh was my favorite place out of all the stuff we saw.
Oh, it's a lovely city.
Oh, it was. I got up one morning and my mom was still wanted to sleep in. I got up early one morning and I spent like 2.5 hours just going through Old Town. I walked probably every street, got coffee, got Danish. Uh, real funny story. So I walked into the graveyard where JK got names for the characters, and Voldemort in particular, Tom Riddle. So I'm following the internet thing that tells me where I got to go, and it's not super clear. And I get to the line of graves where it is, and I'm kind of looking, and the guy's sitting there. One of the workers is got a blower. He's blowing leaves, and he turned it off, and he goes, "You looking for Riddle?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Right down there." So directs me to Riddle. I go down there, met another girl there, took her picture. She took my picture. We had a moment talking. I come back up and the guy was still there and he turns the blower off and we just start chatting. And I was like, does it piss you off that every day, probably every hour, someone's coming looking for this grave? And he goes, no, it's great. He goes, you're bringing life into the cemetery. It's great. And he goes, can I tell you something? I said, sure. He goes, I've never read the books and I've never seen the movies. And I was just like, and you're literally
Wow.
standing 20 feet from Voldemort's grave. So,
Oh, amazing.
and that
Oh,
part of why I tell that story is that's the part of life is if you get out and again, I know that you need to have financial resources to be able to do travel. I totally respect that. I've been not having that ability a good chunk of my life, but there's got to be something you can go see, even local, whether it's just where you live. Get out and explore because you don't know what's going to happen. And especially from a writer's perspective, is if you want to be able to tell stories, sure, if you have a wicked imagination, you can just concoct everything in your head. But if you get
yeah.
the ability to go out and go places and walk the streets and do that, it's gonna give an air of realism to your story because you've
Yeah.
walked those cobblestone roads, you ate that food, you saw Voldemort's grave, whatever it might be. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think definitely. I think read as widely as possible and live as an interesting life as possible. And if you're an introvert, then read about as many lives as possible, read about as many places as possible.
Yep.
And not everyone can, as you say, for financial reasons or physical or mental disability, or
Hmm.
there's lots of reasons why people can't travel, and but you can do whatever you're capable of doing to the limits of your exploration, whether it's virtual exploration, physical, books,
Right.
videos. I mean, actually, um, YouTube, for example, there's no excuse not
No.
to know everything about every country in the world because there is some vlogger doing something somewhere, street foods of Delhi or temples of Thailand, or you can learn everything about a place
Yep.
thanks to YouTube with an infinite amount of people providing free content for us.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why people can't get out and explore the world from the comforts of their own home. But I agree with you. If you can, there's no substitute for going there yourself and
Yeah.
having the real 3D experience.
Well, what's interesting is real quick, the story about the Voldemort, I'll add to this, is the only reason I even ended up going there was the night before we went to a really nice dinner at a place called the Witchery, which is right at the base of the castle in Edinburgh. As we were leaving, there was a bar across the street, and my cousin was with us as well, and she likes to have a nip most evenings. So we go in there to get her a drink. I actually had a whiskey sour. I don't drink that often. So I decided to have a little whiskey. Well, table next to us, they're playing live music. So we start talking to the musicians as they wind down. It ended up being several people, but a dad and his daughter and son who were in their 30s or late 20s. And then we just started having a conversation. They're like, "Hey, would you like to go to another place that does even more music?" And it's like, 12:30 at night, whatever. Like, yeah. So we go down this other bar, which is a very well-known bar in the area. The best fiddle player in Scotland was playing next table over there. And in the course of just staying for a little while and having conversations, something got brought up about, oh yeah, there's normally a lot of people here for Harry Potter. I've read the books, I've seen the movies, all that. I didn't realize all the Harry Potter stuff was there. He's like, "Oh yeah, go over here. Here's to the school. Here's to go to the graveyard here." And so that kind of fired up my brain that night to go,
Wow.
"Okay, I'll go explore in the morning." And that's why I spent the next 2 hours that morning
Yeah.
just looking at the sites. I didn't even know they were there, but one person mentioned you're in the middle of Harry Potter lore, and I'm like, "Oh, my kids would love this." So of course, take a
Yeah.
bunch of photos, videos, send them to my kids, tell my kids, and my kids are kind of like, "Cool." Like, really? Really? You got these books on CD and we watch all the movies together and
Very
really that's the
good.
response I get. That's the other lesson for you.
Cool.
If you want to destroy your dreams and feel like you're nothing, have children. They'll
Yeah.
reinforce to you that you're just your mom and dad. Guess what? You're not a big deal.
Brilliant.
Too funny. Well, hey, let's talk for a few minutes about Deadbeat. How did you dream this up? And the theme this explores, I think, is pretty fascinating. So if you wouldn't mind giving the elevator pitch for folks and talk about how it came about, I enjoy it. I always enjoy your books. So another banger, as they would say over in
Oh,
your home
thank you.
country.
Yeah, so Deadbeat is about a man called Peyton Collard who's the deadbeat of the title. He's reached rock bottom and a stranger offers him some money to kill a bad man. And it's a life-changing sum of money for Peyton, who is estranged from his wife and is desperate to try and do right by his daughter. And various things push him into taking up this offer. And he realizes that there's more to it than he thought, and
Mhm.
ends up investigating the murders that he commits.
Hmm.
So it's written as a memoir, so it's a sort of riff on true crime.
Mhm.
So it's Peyton's account of his experiences. And um, yeah, I think the idea came from this idea of the question of how responsible are we for other people? How are we all connected to each other? And during the pandemic, we all took extraordinary measures to keep each other safe, to try and support the economy. We changed our behavior massively.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of how much responsibility should we bear when it's a non-emergency? Are you responsible for the bad things that a company does if they're making cheap products in Asia somewhere and they have kids in their factory? How much culpability do you have?
Yeah.
What if it's in something bad happening in your city
Right.
because you're doing something? And it's all of those ideas of where does the responsibility end? And it's something you look at a lot in law, where's the responsibility for negligence or for bad action. But one of the things that I've always found interesting is that when um, companies started. They started in tea houses in London,
Hmm.
um, and it was a way of the merchants limiting their losses
Hmm.
for sea voyages. So
Right.
you'd go, try and get some tea from somewhere or some spices or whatever it
Yep.
is, and you would incorporate a company to limit your exposure.
Right.
That was it. That was your thing. But if you look at what happened over the hundreds of years since then, companies have been given legal personality. They can act pretty much as a person in most jurisdictions around the world.
Yep.
And if your boss fires you, they just shrug and they say, well, that's for the good of the company.
Hmm.
But the company doesn't exist. The company is a legal construct. Oh, well, I didn't do that pollution in the water supply. It was the company.
Right.
Oh, I didn't employ those kids in that sweatshop in Asia. It was the company.
Yep.
We've created a fiction that allows ourselves to have distance from any responsibility. And a
Hmm.
director of a company can sit there at night and sleep and make all of their money that they're making. Their CEO can sit there and not worry about the morality of what they're doing. Because
Right.
let's take something innocuous. Let's take something innocuous. Coca-Cola. Okay?
Not
CEO
innocuous,
of Coca-Cola.
depending on your view, not innocuous, but okay.
Well, but
I know.
it's probably the least innocuous of the global brands. But let's
Sure.
take Coca-Cola. The CEO of Coca-Cola sleeps every night, despite knowing that you've probably materially contributed to diabetes, tooth decay, heart disease, obesity, all of these things.
Right.
But no moral judgment is made about that person
Yeah.
because it's a company, it's a brand. So I wanted to look at this idea of how responsible are we for the bad things that go on in the world.
Hmm.
And I also wanted to follow a villain. I wanted to um, look at an anti-hero and see if I could get readers to, if not sympathize, at least identify with Peyton.
Right.
And it's been really interesting reading the emails and messages that people have said, sent me after they've
Hmm.
read the book. Some people are really troubled by him and say, I disliked him, but I found myself engaged with the story, even though he's a horrible character. And other
Hmm.
people really sympathize with him. And
Yeah.
this, because, and I think I haven't delved into it because, the polite thing when a reader contacts you is just say, thank you very much, really appreciate kind words.
You don't
But I
debate
don't,
people on email if they're docking your books.
no, I mean, this is a lot of this is on Instagram or
Yeah.
Twitter or I, but my guess is that the dividing line between people who like him and people who are repelled by him is probably hardship.
Hmm.
So I reckon the people who identify with him more will
Yeah.
have had more hardship in their lives and kind
Totally.
of be more empathetic towards, oh, okay, I can see why someone would make these stupid decisions. I can see why someone would do these things out of desperation. And I think people who've had maybe less hardship in their lives have a have less understanding and sympathy of, well, how do you do that? Why would you do that when you're squeezed? Because
Right.
maybe you haven't been squeezed hard enough.
Yeah.
If you're squeezed hard enough, history shows us people will do pretty much anything.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, no, I thought you said that perfectly. So yeah. Yeah. And I think people in their mind think they know what their limits are. What would you be willing to do? And they might even sometimes ask themselves, what would I do if this happened? But when you're actually put in the real world scenario of that happening,
Hmm.
um, I'll use an own personal example, and it's probably a bad thing to put on tape here, but I'll put it on. It ended in a divorce, so maybe it didn't work well. But one of my earlier dates or times with my ex-wife was we got really deep, really early conversation wise. And one of her questions to me was, "What would you do if someone molested our child?" And I didn't even like go, "Man, that's a tough one." I immediately, the first words out of my mouth was, "I'd kill him." And she looked at me like, would you really? And I said, that's my first thought. Hopefully, I would be brought back to thinking, well, that's not moral either. But I was like, that's a tough one because, especially anything that happens, and I try to explore some of these things and probably will in future books. One of the ones I'm working on sometimes it's in the background. I dabble with it every so often, but it has to deal with the sex trade and the sex industry. And I probably don't want to write it because it's such a horrible concept, but it's something that you have as when you have kids. Sometimes you think and you hear about kidnappings or kids being, abducted into the industry. It's like, yeah, what would you do if your kid was all of a sudden taken and missing or whatever? Would you just sit on your couch every day and go, hope they come back? And maybe if there's some evidence that they were taking into that industry, man, I don't know how you would sleep at night going, nothing I can do. Let the authorities do it. So I understand why someone would say, man, I'm going to find a way of getting into this. I'm going to way of try to there's a way I can track down. So I love the moral questions your books open up, especially the last two in particular, because I think they're things that people shouldn't dwell on all the time. But also at the same time, we shouldn't be complacent in life and just never think about the big things in life and just be glad that, we've got Netflix and a grocery store and a vehicle that runs and be like, oh, everything's good because, again, kind of tying back to what we talked about before, all that can be gone like that. You can have one fire come through and all the stuff you saved up in life and all the things you were hoping to work towards, it can be gone and you're going to have to rebuild. And maybe you might have to even reassess, do I want to live back here? Do I want to pursue the career I'm doing if it's not like something like a horrible fire? If something bad happens, though, I think it quickly puts in perspective of what in life really is important. You're not going to leave
Yeah.
anything behind. You're not taking anything with you. You're leaving stuff behind, in the sense of family you might have or books you've written or whatever, but none of that stuff goes with you. So
Mm.
what was this for? Was this just to have a good conversation with Adam Hamdy every now and then? And if so, okay, cool. It was a good ride then. But maybe there's a little more to life, maybe there's more to
I
life.
can I can safely say the benchmark of your successful life is not having conversations with me.
I think we
So
agree.
yeah, so
But
I mean, I think I was talking to a friend actually about gratitude,
Mhm.
and so much about gratitude and appreciation of life is perspective. If I sit here and say, well, my house is smaller than my neighbors, or my car isn't as new as, my friends, or I don't have as much money as my family, or I don't, you can always paint a picture of you being hard done by, life is unfair, life is difficult. You can always paint that picture. But if you are grateful for the opportunity, if you are grateful for life, if you're grateful for what you have,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that you're complacent and you say, well, this is it. I think it actually makes you more likely to strive. And if you listen
Yeah.
to people who are incredibly successful, yes, there's a drive, there's a motivation, but there's also an appreciation of how, just at a fundamental level, it's good fortune to be alive. It's good fortune to have anything. It's not.
Mhm.
Um, None of us are entitled. None of us are due anything. If you look at the animal world, life is hard. You struggle, you strive, you try and get food, you try and find somewhere to sleep that's safe, and you're not going to get some big predator coming after you. That's the life um, for most creatures on this planet.
Mhm.
And for 95% of humans, it's a day-to-day life.
Yeah.
It's subsistence or a very short-term security, and just struggling to get by. So I think, yeah, what you said about gratitude is really important. And so much of Peyton's journey is about coming to appreciate what he has in life. And um, I don't know whether he redeems himself at the end of the book. People are out, the jury's out on that.
Mhm.
But he has a very different perspective by the time you get to the end of the story. So
Yeah. Well, I would agree with you that our purpose of life is not just to have these random conversations at times, but I've said this to you privately as well, of meeting you years ago, you being a factor in the journey I've taken has meant a lot. And
yeah,
it's something that I didn't expect coming into this. I think I've told you before, I always thought it'd be kind of competitive. And that's why I was like, ugh, that's the part of this I don't want to get involved in is like who's selling more books and who's got the bigger house and who's got the more book contracts going on and all that. Sure, that happens. And I think that more happens with shallow people in this business that maybe have the wrong motivation. But as a general rule, the people you come across in the writing journey are amazing human beings. You're one of them for me. You've been more kind sometimes than I think you should have been, just in reviewing books and giving me advice and all that. But that's stuff that it reinforces to me the goodness in the world, the kindness in the world, and that, treat people. It's an old, it's from basically from, biblical and religious texts of treat people the way you want to be treated. If you go through life and treat people like a piece of crap, what do you really deserve? You probably should be treated like a piece of crap. So no, treat people the right way, and especially in the writing community, man. And I say this to a lot of different authors. If you have a question, reach out to me. By far, I probably have very few answers, but the answers I have, I'll gladly share with you. I was talking with someone yesterday. I was on his podcast talking about Babylon Will Rise because I didn't do much promotion for it last month with all my travels and stuff. And so we were doing an interview, and at the end of it, he was like, "Hey, can I talk to you about some marketing stuff? And can you mind going on Amazon and look at my landing page and all that?" So I did, set back some stuff, and I said, "Send me some examples of how you set up your Facebook ad." I don't know the perfect way to do it because I'm not making $4.2 million a day on Facebook, from Facebook ads. But whatever I know, I'll try to help and be like, nah, maybe you should tweak that. I'm glad to spend the time because I love to see people pursuing what they're interested in. And is there a way, what I've learned and what most of the time people have taught me, you've taught me a lot of things, David Darling, different authors have been generous with their time. Is there a way I can impart that knowledge to someone else so that they don't have to struggle as hard as we might have to get to the next step?
Totally agree, and thank you, for all those nice, kind words. Yeah, I'm just a believer. I think there's too much transaction in the world. You talk to a lot of people, everything's transactional. Relationships are transactional. The dating scene is transactional. Business is transactional. There's no, I mean, you've been at your job for 20 years. That's so rare. It's
Yeah,
so rare. You're disposable product, but also vice versa. The to most employees, a company is a disposable thing now.
it's a
Everything's
ladder to get to the
transactional.
next step. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, so I think um, I'm much more about experiences in life, and I'm much more about people and relationships. And um, it's funny for a project I'm researching, I met somebody who is in the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, extremely, extremely wealthy,
Mhm.
one of the richest people in the world. And I noticed we were in a hotel, and I noticed this person was being really polite to all the servers, really polite. And for me, it's always a mark of how you behave to someone that you want, that can give you nothing, that there's nothing that you want from them, how
Absolutely.
you behave to them. And what was funny was he actually raised it in the meeting. He said, one of my benchmarks is how people behave to those who can offer them nothing.
Hmm.
And I just thought, well, it's obvious that's how you think because I've seen you doing it all
In
all
action, yeah.
afternoon. Yeah, and I think it's a good way to ascertain someone's character is look at how they behave with people that can give them nothing. A waiter, the door person in a hotel, somebody that is more junior than them in a company. There's those kind of relationships where the power dynamic is one-sided. Look at how they behave in those situations, and it will tell you pretty much everything you need to know about what kind of person they are.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely. Um, what's next for Adam Hamdy? What's on the plate that you can discuss? Deadbeat's out, so we want people to go pick up Deadbeat, which you were kind enough to give me a copy. I've got that there.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
where are we going?
Yeah, so Deadbeat came out in December. I have a new private book with James Patterson coming out in April in the UK and the rest of the world. Not sure when it's going to come out in America. We're a bit behind with the American publication. of that series. I think the next one to come out in the States will be Private Beijing. So just waiting on a publication date for that. I start writing my seventh book with him um, this month, actually,
Wow.
Private Tokyo. So we're going to Japan, um, which will be a real cracker, actually. Yeah, we're excited about this one.
Hmm.
And then I got a couple of things cooking that are very big that I can't really talk about at this stage, but hopefully not too much longer.
Hmm.
And then I have a TV show which we've just got a one of the biggest distributors in the world to said they wanted to finance, so we're just putting that together, and that would actually shoot in Mauritius.
Wow.
So it looks like it's gonna go for a production in this
Uh,
summer.
if you need a
So
key grip or something, you know,
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I was gonna say when you do your next Thanksgiving trip, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Mauritius.
that could, if it can't do it in two, because the only dilemma I have is in 2 years. I guess I've never publicly said this on a podcast, but it's right before I turn 50 in 2 years. I'm 48 now.
Oh, right.
Um, I've already started making the plans and recruiting. It's a guys only trip. Nothing against women, but want to take the guys, and I want to do 2 weeks in Australia and New Zealand. Right about a month
Oh,
and a half before I
wow.
turn 50.
Wow.
Go big or go home, Adam. Go big or go
Yeah,
home. I want
that's
to go to
amazing.
I want to go to Hobbiton. I want to go to Sydney Opera House if if something going on then. I want to jump in the Great Barrier Reef and see if sharks really do
Oh,
hurt when they bite you. And, I want to live
don't
life.
do that one.
Yeah.
That's not it. Don't do
If
that.
you come with me, I'll let you be like, "Hey, Adam, jump in.
Yeah.
Look, there's a
I'll
tiger
be the
shark."
shark fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just cut you
Yeah,
on the way into
no.
the water and I'll be like, "You'll be
No, no.
fine. This will be great research for your next book." So
No, 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 thank you. No, thank you.
So that
Yeah.
might make that Thanksgiving a little difficult to also then be like, hey, I'll
Okay.
fly to Mauritius for a
Well,
week
if we're still here 4 years' time, the beaches are lovely. You can chill, you can recover from your shark injuries.
for my shark.
The American patient will bandage you up, put you on a sun lounger on the beach.
I do appreciate it. You've been a dear friend over the years. We at some point though, and I've been saying this for years, and you've been almost
Yeah,
some point
we
because
need to go to Yosemite.
I've
Yeah,
been
I
six
know.
times now, and my goal
Wow.
is to try. I'm trying going forward, and this is
Yeah.
audacious, and I don't know if it'll happen. I'm going to try to see if I can make it there every year, even if it's only
Wow.
for 2 or 3 days, just to get there. I found some spots that are really special to me, and I've had people give me a hard time saying, "Why do you keep going back to Yosemite?" I think because just ending it on the note of what we've written and what we put into our books is that's where I wrote the ending of the first book I ever wrote. That's not published. I might publish it one day. I might put it under my own brand and go fix it. But that last chapter takes place in Yosemite. And when I
No.
finished that chapter there, I think I left part of my heart there. And anytime
Oh.
I go back there, I feel closer to God. I feel
Mm,
closer to everything that's important in my life. And I just those moments I live for. And as I leave, I go, okay, I come back. How do I come back next year? How do I make it happen? So there's just a connection. I was looking at the place we stayed this time. Um, I stayed with some coworkers. We did actually a company retreat there for a few days. And there's a housing development inside Yosemite, and you can buy or rent. And I started looking at houses, going, how can I buy one of these houses and come here like every year of my life? Um, so this is where I need you to pull some strings in the Body Man Netflix deal for me and get me some real bank, Adam. That's how we're ending this. I need the 7-figure deal, brother. This isn't working.
Oh. I
No.
love it.
Uh,
Oh, okay.
so
So
you got your
you
home,
need me to be you need me to be the rainmaker.
dude. 15%. You can be my agent with it. Come on, baby.
I see.
Let's get this deal going. I got a third book
Oh,
coming out this summer, fourth next
all
year. We
right.
can do a series. No, no. All joking aside, life is definitely about relationships, and it's about hopefully adventures and a spiritual journey. And I'm grateful that you've become part of my journey. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, likewise. Netflix, if you're watching this, check out The Body Man. Eric wants a house in Yosemite. Make the show.
And I might need a place in Mauritius too, so Adam and I can, kind of start working on projects together down the line before we get too old. So,
Cool.
let's
Just relaxing on the beach, coming up with ideas.
yeah, go big or go home, my friend. So, thank you for coming on. I will not end with my standard question because I asked you a year ago, what does Adam
Okay.
write in his last page? So, for this one, we're going to end with Deadbeat, which is the newest Adam Hamdy book, is out now. So, go support Adam and pick up a copy. And if you already have a copy, go buy a copy for someone you like or dislike. It doesn't matter.
I like it. That's good. Well, thanks
Where,
for having me on again, Eric.
you're
That's
welcome.
it's been a blast.
Always, where should people go to find you? Give your website, and then where should we go to get your books? Which I think the answer is anywhere in the world, probably
Yeah.
online. But
So website www.adamhamdy.com, and my books are available pretty much anywhere books are sold.
love it. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Eric. And yeah, we'll speak soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good.
Take care.